Folks, my new book, Not Sick of Winning, A History of President Trump's First 100 Days, is available now. Just head over to notsickofwinning.com to buy it on Amazon. Здравствуйте. This is Michael Malice speaking. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. You know, when you do a show like mine, you're often pitched guests, and 99 times out of 100, it's someone you would never want to talk to. And then once in a while, you get something that gets you so excited that you're talking about it for days and days and days. And that happened to me. Our guest today is a man who I'm happy to introduce, Yakov Smirnoff. Growing up, you were one of the biggest comics of the 80s. All the Russian jokes that the kids these days still make, they don't realize it's from you, right? So now, after your big career in stand-up, you opened a theater in Branson, which is still going strong. You got your degree studying psychology of humor. I have so much to discuss with you about. One of the things I wanted to start with is you came over. You're from Odessa, where my grandma's from. For people, Americans who don't know, Odessite have a reputation for being big mouths and they talk a lot, which
Funny people, funny.
And which really worked out for you, obviously.
It did.
You came to the States in 77. I came to 78. You also moved to New York. What neighborhood did you move to? Do you remember?
Well, first we were in Queens for a very short time. And then because our friends who helped us come to America, they lived in Queens. And a lot of Russian-speaking community lived there. And I realized that I want to do comedy, but I didn't speak English. And, I said, my parents and I will move to Manhattan. And my friend who helped us come to America said, no one lives in Manhattan except of bankers and bank robbers. and I said, I'll be one of them. And they thought you're committing suicide by going to Manhattan. And we couldn't obviously afford a lot of, we didn't have much money. So we found a place in Washington Heights, which is uptown Manhattan. Still Manhattan, but it's closer to New Jersey than to downtown. So that was where we lived for a little while before I went to Hollywood.
So yeah, for people who don't know, Washington Heights is like 180th Street. So it's way, way up there. And it's not a good neighborhood now. What was it like, late 70s, early 80s?
It was okay. It was kind of a German immigrant neighborhood. So there was a lot of immigrants in our building that helped us to establish, get settled. That's one of the things I talk about in my show, how important that was, that kindness that Americans shown to us. And we didn't expect it. We came from the Soviet Union where everybody's kind of doing what they got to do to survive.
Right.
And here people were just generous and give us things that, like waffle iron, that wasn't a good thing because my mom ruined 2 pair of my pants with that iron. But these people were very helpful because they came from other parts of the world, so they knew how difficult it is, and so they were doing not just physical, like giving us blankets, pillows, dishes, things we really needed and desperately needed. And they did give it to us, but they also gave us advice on how to get a job, things like that. And one of the things I don't think I ever told anybody on the podcast that they said, what did you do in the Soviet Union? I said, I used to work on the cruise ships. And so So they helped me to put together a resume, which I didn't speak English. So they send it out to all the different cruise companies. And at that point, I moved to Miami because I was a bar boy and bartender. And I get a call from my mom saying they called from Royal Caribbean and they want you to come on board today because they looking for assistant of cruise director or something like that. So, so I got on board, and then they realized that I don't speak English. So, so, but they had to keep me for at least a week. They couldn't so they gave me a job as to do excursions. So I was supposed to stand there and just show people where to go. So there are probably still people in St. Thomas who are looking for that bus, and so I got fired. Well, they didn't take me on the next cruise. So, but that was the good beginnings.
So it's something you said that I find really interesting. There's a writer I love called Ayn Rand. She's right there on the cover of my
Yeah,
last book,
yeah.
and she was from St. Petersburg. She moved to the U.S. in 1926, a little bit before us, and she wanted to be a screenwriter. And she also didn't really speak English. And on some level, it's just like you're a crazy person. You're going to come to another country, you don't speak the language. You're going to make a living in that language. Okay, like we need to put you in Bellevue, but that ended up happening. So for you and for her. So for people who are young, who have these kind of aspirations and dreams, which, if you tell 99 people, they're going to say, okay, crazy person. What made you realize that this is something you could actually do as opposed to, am I nuts? Like, what am I thinking?
I guess I didn't know any better. I was daring. I was hooked. I was a comedian in the Soviet Union, so I was kind of hooked on laughter and enjoying that part of my life. So that was I was trying to find that being in the Soviet Union, you might remember, you might not, but the information about America was very limited. And I was lucky because I worked on the Soviet cruise ships, and they allowed me to talk to different uh, groups of people from different countries,
Mhm.
and they would give me an interpreter. So I was able to ask questions. Is it possible to be a comedian? And they would say, yeah, it would be possible. So it was giving me a little bit of information. And I remember one of my friends who worked, I think he was a piano player in a band on the ship. And the band would go with the ship when they would lease them to Britain or Germany or wherever they would take them. And but I wasn't allowed to go abroad. So I went to him. He lived in Kiev, and I remember I said, "You would know if would I be able to be funny there or not?" And I remember him putting a pillow over the phone and saying, "Let's walk outside." And then he would tell me only then, he said, "Yes, they do have comedians, but America," and they were brainwashed because they would, constantly tell them how bad America is. So he would say, "I would never go to America because they sell their mother for money. They're evil." I mean, it was just off from the Communist Party handbook, all of that
Right.
information. So, but I was savvy enough to kind of go, you know what, maybe I'm crazy, but I'm going to give it a shot. And then when I started testing jokes in the bar, I would just translate a joke from what I used to do in the Soviet Union, and then I would test it on my audience or my customers. And I would, if I get tips, then I knew I was funny. If I didn't, then I knew I need to work on it. And so that was kind of my slow process of inching towards my comedy career.
So I've got a Yakov style joke. Is it true in Soviet Russia the cruise ships are one way?
It would be a kind, yeah, yeah. They circle around, but you might not. Yeah.
That's that. So I don't know if you know this story. I told this in my last book, The White Pill. Do you know the story of when Yeltsin went to the supermarket in Houston?
No.
So Yeltsin, he was high up. I think he was mayor of Moscow at the time. This is like late 80s. And he goes to a supermarket in Houston. The supermarket's still there. I went to visit it. And he sees all the food and he sees the people are secretaries buying it. This isn't, senators. And
Right.
he's looking around and apparently they were very taken by the big onions because like you've never even seen onions like this. And on the way back to Soviet Union and they passed through Miami, he's sitting with his head in his hands and it's the moment his brain clicks and he goes, they had to lie to us for years because it's not like, you're kind of hedging the truth. It's like they were told him there's no food. And you look at this and he's like, holy crap. Like even for him, high up, in the party, knowing the extent of the cynicism, to realize how I think Americans are oblivious to how blatant the lies were and how ridiculous and how disprovable because that's what I think people are naive about. They think, oh, they're just kind of twisting the truth. And no, 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 it's just blatant lying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But well, when you used to it, you get. I mean, you kind of accept it and don't challenge it. Um, in my case, I was lucky that I got a chance to. I had a story that happened that was life changing because I was in the first cruise that I took on a Russian cruise ship. They liked me, and they asked me. They weren't paying me. They just gave me a cabin, a room and board, and I was happy to do that. And then they said, do you want to go again? And I said, well, I would like to bring my parents. If you can give me another cabin, I'd go and I don't need to be paid, but I want to take them. And they kicked me out of the office. Literally says, who do you think you are? We have people, hundreds like people like you, and kicked me out. So I go home and it's like early in the morning when the ship came in, and I tell my parents I tried, but they fired me, and so I won't be going back. And then an hour later, a messenger comes in with um, with two sets of tickets for me and my parents, and it said 5 o'clock departure. And I'm like, this is, I never heard of that happening. Because once they kick you out,
Yeah.
you were done for. And so I go on the ship with my parents and I asked the cruise director, who I became friendly with, I said, what happened? How is it possible? And he said, well, we uh, are a lot of times we go abroad because they lease our ships. And we learn from Americans or from British that if you're more talented, you should get more perks in life. And this was, I, it was like, what? Are you kidding me? Really? Is that possible? And he said, yeah, that's the way. And so he said the captain liked you and told the office or the government people that even if they need to give him Yakov my cabin, I want him on the ship because he makes the ship happen or rock. And and I was like blown away. I'm like going, I'm I need to get out of here. That was the big moment. And my mom, that was the first time she watched me entertain groups of people that didn't speak Russian, and I only spoke Russian. And so I would do like Miss Cruise or other things that was interesting to people to do, but they didn't have to speak the language. And I would explain for interpreter what the rules of the game, and then I would comment on it with in Russian on their behavior, and the audience would crack up. And my mom, being a wise woman who was very cautious, she didn't believe that I can do this in America or I can do anything in America because I didn't speak English. So she was like protective, and she's going, Yakov, you're not that smart. Don't we don't want to go. Why would we go? We're gonna die. We're gonna, and um, and at that moment, when she watched that crowd of 1,000 people who didn't speak the same languages, laughing hysterically, she said, "Maybe we should go."
You know, it's very kind of I'm surprised how much of emotional response I'm having to this. Because I came over when I was 2, but knowing that this is something my parents weren't comedians, of course, but knowing that they had to have this similar kind of thought process, is kind of hitting very close to home. But also something you said, I talk about this a fair amount. Americans don't understand Ruski and there's this kind of feeling in the Soviet Union, which is very alien to Americans, completely the opposite, where if your kids have hopes for something, the first thing they do is try to pull the rug out. And it makes sense perhaps in that country because if you stick your neck out, you're the one who's going to be the target, and not just you, but your whole family. Because people in America don't realize that when they come after you, they are cruel and vindictive. And they want you to realize, I'm doing this to you. You know your place. You're nothing. I'm somebody, and I'm gonna make sure you remember my name for the rest of your life. It's very sadistic and pervasive.
Yeah,
But it's frustrating. Well, just one more thing. When I was, trying to make it as an author with my family, it was just like, you're a crazy person. If you want to pay your rent, you have to leave your house and go to an office. And I think to some extent, it took them a long time to realize, it's when I'll tell you another funny story you're going to appreciate. The first time I got abs, my grandmother said, I'm not buying enough food. I'm spending all my money on books and CDs. That's why I'm so thin. And how am I going to explain this to her? That on purpose people are trying to get lean,
yeah,
right?
it's counterintuitive, totally. It's like,
Yes.
what do you mean? What if tomorrow there's no bread? What do you mean? Yeah, yeah.
So how did you what's the actual process for escaping? I was told that my parents just you have to bribe the government with everything you have, and you have to have family here to sponsor you. What was your process?
I think during that time, the movement that was happening, Jimmy Carter was the president in the United States, and he was pushing for human rights in in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets were starving. They couldn't produce enough food. They produced enough food, but they didn't know how to get the crops off the fields. The machinery was terrible. So anyway, so they were starving, and Carter told them that he want to show that they show some human rights, and they let people who want to get out to leave, um, and then they'll give them grain. So I you joke about this that we were exchange of some tons of wheat. Every time I see a Wonder Bread truck, I salute, right? So, but the truth, I mean, it's a joke, but the truth was that there was a window,
Yeah,
and the the window was closed on the Soviet side. It was open on the American side, but it was closed on the Soviet side because they didn't want people to think that rats are running from the sinking ship.
right.
So they did everything and they were clever, very clever,
Yeah,
how they did it. They would say, okay, we can let you, we can, but you need to go to, you have to take your parents if you're a young person, which 95% older people would not consider that.
Right.
Okay, that's already and then if they do consider it, they fire you from work immediately, so you don't have any income, and you don't know if you can survive and how long. And then they want you to go to like all the places where you used to work or study, and they want a letter of recommendation, which was totally bogus, right? Who, I mean, nobody cared, right? But they did it because they knew that most people would have that embarrassment to go and ask for letter of recommendation from a place that they used to work, and they would be treated like traitors. So the whole thing was like, you would, people that you thought were your friends would cross the street if they see you coming. That's how the Soviets did this propaganda to make sure. And then they would say, well, nobody really wants to leave,
Right.
and there's maybe 20 people out of a whole city, and so that was their crisis management, because they were dying system, but they tried to survive the way they knew how.
If I can quote the words of a very funny person, what a country, huh?
Yeah. Thank God. Thank God for America. Yes.
I think you and I both have I want to ask you this. You and I think, both have an extreme amount of affection and patriotism for America that I think many Americans are oblivious to, because it's kind of like when you were born in a place, you just take it for granted and think it's normal.
Right.
What do you wish, what do you think Americans don't appreciate about how great America is?
Well, it seemed like, um, when people tell you on television, or on social media, that this country is wrong to begin with,
Right.
and then they they devalue all of the greatness. After a while, you start believing in that. That's what young people have to deal with. And
Yeah.
the education system, in my opinion, has been infiltrated with the socialist propaganda in the 60s and the 50s. And that was intentional. The KGB did it intentionally to influence the people who are now are, in power. But they were little, kids. So if you it's like, for example, um, when the Soviet government came into power, the number one thing that they wanted to do, not to feed their people, not they wanted to destroy the opposition.
That's right.
So first they, basically killed all the, you know, uh, people who were loyal to the Tsar. They or send them to Siberia or whatever, and that was one. And then they had to destroy the church,
That's right.
because the church was the opposition, because it's an authority that people go to without going to the government, and they didn't want that. So what they did, slowly but surely, they destroyed all the churches, and get rid of all the clergy. And little by little, like when I was growing up in the 50s, saying word God in school, you would be expelled.
Well, not only that, if I can interject, I don't know if you know this, again, speaking of the sadism, they forced priests to denounce God from the pulpit in front of their congregation. So, and they had many times religious people write letters to the newspaper talking about how stupid I was for believing in God, and now Lenin is great. And to your point, I have a quote here from Lenin from my book. So when they took over, they didn't have enough, just the Bolsheviks. So you had the Mensheviks, you had the anarchists, you had the left SRs. Then there was this rebellion in Kronstadt, which they put down, which was the last rebellion the Soviet Union ever saw. And then days after the Kronstadt rebellion, Lenin said, quote, an open proof of one's Menshevism. These were his allies like 9 days ago. An open proof of one's Menshevism should be sufficient ground for our revolutionary courts to confer the highest punishment, that is, shooting. So this wasn't subtle. This wasn't like people were vanished. It was the highest official saying publicly, "You're in the wrong party." Okay, and you know what they say, Yakov? In Soviet Russia, party finds you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I
that's what
heard
ended
that.
up happening,
Yeah, I
yes.
heard that. Yeah. Yeah. But that's the image that I think Americans got for a long and still have that image. But it was true. We were living that. And maybe I didn't see anybody being shot, but my parents did,
Right,
and it came with the milk of the mother saying, just stay in your lane, stay in your lane.
yeah. Um, One thing, Fran Lebowitz, who's also a New York personality, she's often asked that New York sounds a lot better in the '70s, and she goes, "Well, I can answer it because I could tell you I was a lot younger in the '70s, so it's always better to be younger to be older. So it's how do I answer that question?" But I remember, I was a kid in the '80s, that there was this energy in New York. And I don't think it was just because I was a kid. I really feel there was this sense in the air of excitement and positivity. Am I remembering this correctly?
Well, I came in '77 and went to Florida and then came back for about 6 months there. I think you're right. I think there was change happening, but I did not crave going back to New York. I got my start there in a couple of clubs, but I found my home very much in Hollywood for a very long time, and it served me well. All of a sudden, I was like a fresh meat in the market, and all of a sudden, I did the commercials, I did movies, I did television, and I almost thought, well, every immigrant gets that chance to work with Robin Williams and Tom Hanks. I mean, it's a sponsorship, that you you have to have some Eastern European, on their roster. So it became very apparent to me that I was in the right spot until the Soviet Union collapsed,
Right.
and then I was not in the right spot anymore. I
Wait,
was in a bad spot.
wait, before we get to that, did you ever sit mom down, or did she ever admit to you, like, Yakov, you know what? Maybe you were right with this whole America thing?
At some point, they were very cautious, even being in America, and I was starting to make a little money, and they would still say, we'll see where it's going to take you, we'll see."
Right,
And then I got, I bought a house, and they were helping me remodel the house, and you know, uh, and then I get a movie contract, and I tell them about this, and my mom goes, "When can we put the pool in?" And I said, "We'll see, mom. We'll see." Yeah, but
oh,
they eventually did. Eventually, they did, it's when you see that look in moms and dads' eyes of that being proud. I did a Broadway show in 2003, and they were there to them. They went with me to the White House, met President Reagan. I mean, they had. I took them around on all the different cruise ships around the world, stuff that they could not ever imagine that could be possible.
What were some of the biggest surprises that you had when you came to America and saw for yourself?
Well, little, I mean, I we they took us to Queens, and I thought I landed in the wrong spot because I imagined there will be skyscrapers,
Right, yeah,
and in Queens there's like 5 stories, 7 story max,
right.
and I'm going, did we land to a wrong country or something? So that was a beginning, and then friends of ours had dinner for us, kind of celebratory dinner, and they had paper plates, paper napkin, paper tablecloth. Um, they had plastic spoons, and in the end of dinner, they just put it all in the garbage.
Right.
And I went, "Are you kidding me? We could have used this for the next 10 years. I mean, what is that all about?" And they say Americans don't do that. And I'm going, oh man, I don't know if I can get used to that.
Yakov, when I was like 4 or 5, my parents took me to see friends of theirs in Queens, and in the toilet, they had blue water, right? And I thought, "These people must be millionaires. They're getting this blue water pipe in from somewhere. Oh my god." It's like a
What
slim
a
two-bedroom
country,
apartment.
right?
It was so
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Blue water
So,
and a little tidy bowl man in there. Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Hey, it's James Altucher. I've been an entrepreneur, investor, best-selling writer, stand-up comic, and whatever it is I'm interested in, I get obsessed. Yes, it's led to success, but it's also led to such heartbreaking failure. I have failed more times than I can count. I wish in my life I had had people to talk to. That's why I started the James Altucher Show and bring on some of the most brilliant minds in every area of life. People like Richard Branson, Sarah Blakely, Mark Cuban, Danica Patrick, Gary Kasparov, and I wanted to find out exactly how they've navigated the highs, the lows, and everything in between. No fluff, just raw stories and real advice. I've talked to 1,500 of the most amazing people on the planet. So if you want to learn from the best and skip the same old canned interviews, we're all about helping you find your next big idea, level up your thinking, and ultimately to choose yourself. So let's do this together. Subscribe now to The James Altucher Show.
let's get back to the show. So, one of the things that, growing up not having any money, it does a number on me. I'm sure it does on some level on you. There's that part of your brain that's still always there, like people who grew up in the Great Depression.
Still constantly. I did this morning. We have some blinds at the house that don't work. And instead of like getting new blinds, I'm going, I got to fix them. It's like, it's so ridiculous. But that primal brain, that reptilian brain is still there.
I'll tell you something that just happened yesterday. I bought a pair of hippopotamus leather shoes, right?
Uh-huh.
And they were $300, and I'm never gonna wear them because how often do I wear dress shoes? But I wanted to have them because it's like, you know what? I'm not $300 away from homelessness. Like, I can afford it and let them just collect dust, I don't
For
care.
you. Good for you.
What was there must have been the first thing that you bought where you're like, "You know what? This is expensive, but I'm not gonna go crazy. I can afford it now."
I do remember we were in Italy. Uh, we had barely had any money, but I saw, oh, this will choke me up.
It's okay.
I saw this gorgeous tuxedo in a jacket that I never seen before in the Soviet Union, and I told my parents, I said, I'll do whatever it takes. Um, I want to buy that jacket because if I have that jacket, maybe someday I can maybe I can get on stage someday. And this is a funny thing that we were trying to do. Um, we were trying to get money when we were leaving the Soviet Union. And through the grapevine, we heard that in Italy, um, condoms are very expensive. And there was no restriction on how many you can take with you from the Soviet Union. And they were like a couple of pennies. Yeah. And so I would go to every drugstore that I could go to, and I would buy a lot of condoms. And we put them all in one suitcase, my mother's. We figured we figured they'll be embarrassed to ask her. So so I'm not joking. This was and so we got to Italy, and I said, I'll go to open market every day. Not every day. You could do it only on the weekends. On the weekend, and I will sell whatever we got, but I want to get that jacket.
Okay, wow. Okay.
So my mom and
No.
dad, here the Soviet raised people became capitalist. We went open opened that suitcase, and the condom store was erected immediately. And my parents, my dad took on, he would do balloon animals to advertise. And mom was so clever, she translated a couple of phrases from Russian to Italian. And you would see somebody passing by, she would hold up the condom and would say in Italian, if you don't want to have a kid like this, and point at me, say, get a condom. And they would laugh, and they would buy two or three, whatever. So that's how I got my jacket.
Oh my, so you got it.
I did.
Please tell me you still have it somewhere.
I gave it to my sons. He still
Okay.
have it. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's just
And
amazing.
he loves it because I'm having a little bit more challenging time fitting into that same jacket. But he is skinny, so he can, yeah, he
Well,
can.
Yakov, that means you need a Magnum jacket now.
You do?
You do, you Magnum, you're bigger. You need the bigger jacket.
Yeah, yeah. I'm wearing more casual clothing now. It
So
doesn't show off as much, but it covers more.
so let's talk a bit about that because, the Soviet Union falls, and on some level, just personally, you're like, "This is beautiful." I'm sure you remember when the Berlin Wall fell. I'm sure you thought that would never happen in your lifetime. What a
Exactly.
wonderful day that
I was
was.
there with Bob Hope in Germany, chiseling with the hammer, and brought pieces of that. Still have it in my house. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. But I didn't see the writing on the wall. The writing was, Yaakov, get a day job. I missed it. I was chiseling. I was too busy doing this.
Wait, so but what's that like? I mean, you're the Russian comedian, Soviet in Soviet Russia. Well, there is no Soviet Russia. So what's that like for you when your career goes, you're like yesterday's news almost literally.
Exactly. Exactly. Not fun, especially when you have two little kids. One is uh, one was just born, and one was 2 years old. And you buy a house because you think this will always be like that, next to Tom Hanks and Goldie Hawn and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you don't think this will ever end. You're making $1 million a year in Vegas, Atlantic City. I mean, you're just living American dream.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the contracts are not renewed because, you know uh because the industry just sees you as no longer relevant. It's like you when you have a headache, you look for Advil, or but when you don't have the headache anymore, you don't need this anymore. So that was my reality, and it happened over 6 months. First, it was like, no way, no way. Oh, I'm gonna go back to the clubs. I'm still, funny. It
Right.
doesn't go away. It went away, and I tried very hard. And then it was survival. The mortgage is $8,000 a month. Um, you know, how do you, and you have some savings, but it runs out very quickly.
So,
So that's how it was. It was pretty intense.
but what advice would you give to people who have to go through something? Maybe not literally going from being a stand-up star to kind of being a bit of a pariah, but like lots of people have their life changed very quickly. Like, what advice would you have given to yourself?
Well, I took my advice. I kept looking for where there's a need for my talent, and uh, I got um, uh, Willie Willie Nelson was the one who got me to do a Farm Aid concert, and in that concert, I realized how big of the audience I never knew I had, because there was like 50,000 people, and I didn't think they would know who I am. And I walked on stage and they gave me a standing ovation. And I was like, wow, they know me and they don't care that the Soviet Union collapsed.
Right.
And so and Willie at that time was in Branson, performing there, but they didn't really like Willie there much, because he smoked pot, and
Right.
it's kind of a Christian environment now. Now they have those um, places all over, but at that time it wasn't cool. And so, but he said to me, Yakov, your comedy is clean.
Yeah.
You would do well there. And I, I didn't know, but I went to check it out. And when I did, I was blown away of people who were doing a lot of business there, uh, and I didn't know who they were. So I'm like going, if I don't know who they are, and they're selling out 2,000 seat theaters, twice a day, like Meltillas, or there was a guy Soji Tabuchi here, who was a Japanese fiddle player, and people would flock to see him. And I'm like going, well, I can do that. Well, it wasn't as simple, because first, so I rented the theater. I was survival, two kids, gotta do what I gotta do. First show I had was 17 people came,
Oh my God. Okay.
because they booked like a year in advance.
Right.
And here I showed up. I figured I'll put my name on it, but they'll come. No, they didn't come. So it took like 2 years of hard working, putting all the energy into, and all of a sudden I was a business owner. I wasn't
Right.
just stand-up comedian. I had to run the theater. I had to hire people. I had to do all of this thing, market, all of that. And I learned little by little, and being aggressive and not knowing that you can't do it like that just makes you better.
I think having that Soviet upbringing, it teaches you to hustle because you understanding no one's giving you anything. You got to fight for, and people are going to take it away just because they can. So you have to fight and work very, very hard and assume I have this, and I bet you still have this in the back of your mind. I assume whoever I'm dealing with is going to be a screw up or not, not deliver. And always in my head, I'm like, okay, if this person screws up, what's my plan B? Always, right? Is that your right? It's the Ruskium.
Yes.
Yes.
very much so.
But it's also useful because then when they're like, "Oh, I can't do it," it's like, "Okay, great. I know I have my plan B. I'm not panicking."
Don't give up. Don't give
Right.
up. Just keep going. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna have a little bit of a disagreement because there's this Russian thing that I've tried to tell Americans about called anekdote, and it's physically painful for me. But to Americans, what it is Russians get together and they tell the latest anecdote, and these are little stories which have a punchline, and they're so stupid, and the Russians think they're so funny. And my grandfather would tell them to me, and he'd look at me because I don't react. He goes, "Oh, ты не понимаешь, you didn't understand." Like, I got it. It's just not funny. And here's a very famous one: how two people. Oh, did you check out this restaurant? Oh my God, the lighting was off. The waiter was rude. We waited 45 minutes for the food, and when the food came, it was cold. The other goes, "I know, in such small portions," and it's just like, oh my God, like kill me now. Like,
Well, I definitely benefited hugely from that skill set because here's the difference from maybe between what your grandpa is doing, what I was doing. So um, the variety of jokes were tremendous. Um, the need, that's a four-letter word that I really believe I wish that all Americans would understand. If you can meet the need, then you're successful
yeah,
in whatever business that is.
that's right.
So I believe that I could sense what different audiences need, whether if it's adults at the dinner table celebrating birthday, they have one need, and then when you with your friends,
Yeah.
and they want to be a little raunchy, then you give them what they need. I believe that if you can, but I had a variety of that. I could
Okay.
do Armянское radio, the whole like Armenian radio kind of jokes. I don't know if you remember or know that, but they were like question answer. Like, um, um, is there going to be a world peace? The answer is no, but there will be. Uh, uh, there will be no. Will there be a another war? No, but there will be a fight for peace that nothing will be left. Something,
Oh, okay.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Okay.
So they were kind of clever jokes, and then you tune in to what is it that that group of people need. And then when I was on stage there, the jokes that I might have told, off stage, I could not do on stage because somebody is watching and I could get in trouble. But behind the scene, everybody knew that Yakov had some Brezhnev jokes and Khrushchev jokes, and I just kept so it really, I'm very grateful for that skill set because it helped me to identify where am I and what kind of audience do I have and what kind of need is there.
So my friend was, I was speaking at my friend's event, and Norm Macdonald, when he roasted Bob Saget, he found a book from the 50s of like retirement jokes, and he did those. And everyone on the stage was dying, and the audience was like looking at him like, "What the hell is this?" So for him, I got a book from the 1890s of minstrel show jokes, 1900s, and the one I remember, it's clean. It goes, "What's the difference between William McKinley and the Morning Dew? One is mist from the heavens, and one is mist from the earth." So I need to hear a Brezhnev joke because it's got to be terrible at this point. And my God,
Oh, Brezhnev jokes were, it's like would be um, that's the guy goes, I hate what Brezhnev is doing. I'm gonna go and kill him and shoot him. And then he comes back an hour later and said, "Did you shoot him?" He said, "No." Oh, the line was so long that I'd rather stand in line for vodka instead of that. So
that's actually good.
yeah, some things like that that would be. normal kind of jokes. Yeah, Brezhnev goes to a factory and asks the worker, if you had a glass of vodka, could you work? And the guy said, yeah, I think I could. If you had 2 glasses of vodka, could you work? He said, yeah, I could. He said, if you had 3 glasses of vodka, could you work? He said, I'm here, aren't I?
That's actually good.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. The jokes, it depends on who is telling them and what is it that they find funny. Yeah,
Okay.
if it makes me laugh, then I have like a joke contest in my show when I get like the audience finds the funniest person in the audience. They tell jokes, and one of the last shows I had, the guy said that it was a funny joke. The guy said uh, that I went to a social security office, and they said you don't look old enough to get social security. And so he said I unbuttoned my shirt and showed them my gray hair, and they gave me social security. And uh, I told that to my wife, and she said, if you dropped your pants, you would have got disability.
That's good.
Funny,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So to me, it's just a matter of the taste of who's got what kind of taste of jokes. And a lot of my jokes in the beginning of my career in America were the jokes that I used to tell in the Soviet Union.
You studied the psychology of humor and taught about it. I'm very curious to pick your brain about this. Scott Adams, who I'm sure you're probably familiar with, creator of Dilbert, he has said that I think 30% of people can't perceive humor. I don't know if it's that high, but it's certainly a significant percentage of the population. You see it all the time on social media. I want to hear your thoughts on the psychology of dark humor, because I have a very dark sense of humor. And there's that joke about with a picture of Stalin in Russia. Dark humor is like food; not everybody gets it, right? And people get very upset
Yeah,
by dark humor. I think Eastern Europe, it's very dark, the humor, because if you, what's the point of crying about it? We're gonna have to deal with it. We might as well laugh about it, right? What else
correct,
are we gonna do,
correct,
right?
correct.
There's a sense of
Well,
powerlessness.
I think it goes right back to what we were just talking about. It's what is it that you need? Your brain
Right.
needs that, right? So you can watch horror movies, and I want to watch romantic comedies. It's what you need. You might want to, you enjoy action movies, and I could enjoy, some other stuff. So I think so the, the insight that I got after getting my doctorate was called Law of Laughter, LOL. And I had to do an empirical study on that. So my hypothesis were that the laughter happens because there are several ingredients.
Okay.
Uh, and most people don't understand it, so they replace the word laughter with humor, comedy, jokes. It's kind of the same, and I don't think it is. I think it's very specific. Laughter is a result, whether you're
Yeah.
telling whether you're telling a dark joke or light joke or clean joke or dirty joke. Laughter is what you're aiming for. All right, that's a result. How does that what makes it happen is the two other ingredients. So if you look at setup, punchline, laugh, right? Every good joke has that structure: setup, punchline, laugh. Setup is has to meet the need of the person you're telling it to. If you don't, there no even if your humor is good and let's say they came to see a clean show,
Yeah.
and you tell them something of color, they won't laugh because he didn't meet their need.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the three elements. It's needs one, humor two, and laughter is three, and they're in that order. If you reverse it, I tell that to the audience sometimes. If you say a punchline first, let's say
Right.
you say meat patty, not funny, right?
Right.
But if you say, how does the hamburger introduce his girlfriend?
Okay.
Meat patty,
Right.
funny, right? That's that's what happens most of the time when people are not able to create laughter or get it, is because or their needs are not met, or their humor didn't match the humor of a person. Especially when you tell a joke to somebody one on one, when you have an
Right.
audience, maybe 30% of people don't have that sense of humor, but majority will laugh. 70%
Right.
will laugh. If you tell it to a one person and they stare at you, and then you go, well, they don't have the same sense of humor. You're probably correct, or you told them something they couldn't relate to, or whatever. That's why it's much easier to perform in front of a bigger audience than a small.
That's interesting you said that because one of my techniques is whenever I meet someone, I throw out a slightly inappropriate comment just to gauge the reaction. And if they make that face, I'm like, all right, we're not the same kind of person, and that's fine, but I know where this is going to go. If they just roll their eyes, that's also fine because like they got it, they just don't think it's funny, but they got it
Ex-
at least. So
Exactly.
it's a very, very good metric.
Yeah.
One final one. There's got to be someone or several people who really were instrumental in helping you make it. Early on? Like, do you remember who these guardian angels were? Like, who helped you out?
Well, definitely Mitzi Shore,
Oh, yeah.
the owner of the comedy store. She was the guardian angel on steroids. I came to Hollywood when I barely, maybe I had 5 minutes of material that I translated from Russian to English. My English was not very good. And I came there to audition. Someone in New York told me that they know a producer of Three's Company, which was a big show in America at that time. And
That's how I learned English, by the way, and I ran into
is that
Suzanne
right?
Summers at Fox, and I was like, "Oh my god," and I was trying not to freak out, but it makes it even worse, and
Yeah,
she goes, "A lot of people learned English from that show because it was so physical." She
yeah,
said, "I get that a lot," so it was really
yeah,
great.
yeah. So he was executive producer at that time. And I thought if I go there, I will, I'll go for 10 days to Hollywood and I'll become a star in,
Yeah.
in 10 days. And then I'll go back to New York and buy a Fifth Avenue apartment to my parents. Cash. Okay. I had a plan. Everything was working ex-
Maybe
except
mom was right about you. I don't know, man.
in that portion. Yes. Yes. But it served me well. And so um, I got a spot at the open mic night on Sunday in the Comedy Store. And I was hoping Ted Bergman was the name of the
Yeah.
producer, that he'll come and discover me, and then I'm I'm done. I'm ready. And so he didn't make it. Couldn't come for some reason. I was bombed. I was like, this is a day four, and I'm nowhere. And I'm monitoring at least my timing. So but I did the show, and I'm walking on Sunset Boulevard after, and I'm kind of bummed because I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do next. And the girl, Chrissy was her name. She was Mitzi's assistant, and she runs after me, and she goes, "Yakov, congratulations!" And I go, "Why? He didn't come." And she said, "No, no, Mitzi liked you."
Oh,
And I
wow.
and I said, "Who is Mitzi?" I didn't know. I did not know. So she goes, "Well, she's the owner of the comedy store. Go talk to her." And so I went there, sit down there, and again, this will choke me out because she said, "You're very good. You should stay in Los Angeles. There's always place for good and different."
Yeah.
And I don't know who I'm talking to. So, and I said, "Thank you, but I have to go back to New York. My parents are there." And she said, "So what does your dad do?" And I said, "He was a building construction engineer." And she goes, "Can he be a carpenter?" I go, "Yeah, he's real handy and can do it." She said, "Bring him here. I'll give him a job as a carpenter at the
Oh,
comedy
wow.
store." And then she goes, "Where do you live?" And I go, "Well, I stay with some friends, my parents." And she goes, "I have a house above the comedy store, and you can rent a room there for $120 a month
Oh my god.
and live with other comedians." And again, I still don't know who I'm talking to. So I'm going, "Okay, well, thank you, thank you." And she goes, "Come back tomorrow and see a regular
Wow.
show." And so I come back tomorrow, Monday, and I sit in the back of the original room, and first person on stage, Robin Williams. He just hit number one with Mork and Mindy, and followed him is Billy Crystal, and followed him is Leatherman, and followed him is Pryor,
Oh
and
my
I'm
god.
sitting there, and I'm going, "It's day 5. I'm ahead of schedule. If she likes me and she likes these people,
Right.
uh, and I have a place to live, and I get a job for my parents, I'm good." That's changed my life.
It's just ever do a set that killed so much it got your dad a job? I mean, that sounds like a joke itself, but that ended up happening. By the way, if you're ever here in Austin, I don't know if you know this, Rogan's Comedy Club is the mothership, but the bar next to it is called Mitzi's after her. So if you're ever here, I would love to take you there.
Yeah, I'd love to go. I was one of the I was one of the pallbearers of
Oh my god. Oh, wow.
yeah.
Well, I think it's great that that place is there in her honor and that her memory is being kept alive by Joe. And I think that says a lot to her character. Everyone speaks very, very highly of her,
Oh,
and how many people, that she's what a curator of talent. I mean, this one of a kind woman, and I just think that's so cute. This guy, wet behind the ears, is like, "That's nice, lady, but I gotta go on Three's Company, so I'll call you when I have time." Um, Folks, head over to malice.locals.com where Yakov took questions from supporting listeners. Yakov, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
that I didn't feel like it was an interview. It was like two friends talking, having a nice chat over dinner.
You are welcome.
This summer, Pluto TV is exploding with thousands of free movies. Summer of Cinema is here. Feel the explosive action all summer long with movies like Gladiator, Mission Impossible, Beverly Hills Cop, Good Burger, and Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Bring the action with you and stream for free from all your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.